It is not hard to handle multiple freelance writing clients and projects when you have the proper and right systems and processes in place. I like the chill cat, Holly. So we're going to go over the 4 super simple, super easy hacks to get into it. And I want to make sure that I let you know that while we're going through these, we're going to go 4, 3, 2, 1. And these should not be difficult, okay? These are ways that we should be running our business regularly. So let's go over number 4. Oh, Charlie's not here right now because I know people are going to ask. Charlie is outside sunning herself like a baked bean. So when Charlie's done sunning herself like a baked bean, she'll be here. So 4, let's go over 4. So this is what I want you to think about. You need to create a personalized deadline schedule. So what that means is you need to figure out, do you need multiple calendars? So for me, the example I always give is I have 3 different methods that help me stay on track. This is so that I don't have to keep everything in my brain and feel anxiety about it all the time. This is so that I know where I'm at different phases of my business. So for me, everybody knows I have my dry erase calendar over here. I will link to it below, but it's like $15 or $20 on Amazon. It's a big dry erase calendar. It's like 3 foot by 4 foot. And that's where I plan out everything at a big picture. Then I have my Apple Calendar, which is like my weekly and monthly stuff. So my Apple Calendar has all my deadlines, when I need to be on calls, when I need to talk to my clients, when I need to turn things in. Then I have like 900 reminders. So for me, what works best is to have reminders at like a 2-week level, a 1-week level, like 4 days, 2 days, 1 day, and then like at like time of event, basically like time of event. High flower power. So that means like the day it's due. And these reminders allow me to, hey, Karina, these reminders allow me to have things not in my mind. So like the reminders are like, don't forget about this, or like as I'm working on different components, it helps me remember like, okay, cool. Like I've got X amount of days to finish it up, or I've got this thing going on. So I have a 3 calendar system. The big picture overview dry erase calendar, it's over here. That's why I always point over here. It's on my wall. I have it set up so that it's by quarters. So it's hung up. So it's like 3 months across. So I see every quarter. That is like at a glance, like what's going on. So if someone asks me about a deadline or like, what can I do? I take a glance at it and I'm like, what else is going on this month that I can kind of figure out? Then I have my monthly and weekly calendar with all of my deadlines with reminders and stuff in my Apple Calendar. I have had students who do really well with paper calendars. So if that's something that you need like one of those big month paper calendars. I feel like that can help a lot. But you need to, the super simple hack is like, you need to have some kind of way that works for you pretty much every single time for your deadlines. I don't care what it is. If you make to-do lists, if you use, like I had students, both Wealth Lab and Runway students, use Tascade or use Dubsado, which is what I like for my to-do list. You can use Trello. I don't care what system it is. You need a list. You want a check thing. You want it to be gamified. You want it paper and pen. But we need some kind of way to see both when we need to get on calls with clients, when we need to deal with deadlines, and it helps us map out our time, when these projects are due, when we need to get started, and really kind of make a personalized version of like, where are our deadlines? And for me, it's like whatever works for you works for you. That's the thing, is a lot of times I talk to writers and they're like, I need the perfect thing. You need to tell me the perfect thing. And just because it's the perfect thing for me, or just because it's been the perfect thing for other writers that I've taught or I've coached, doesn't mean it's going to be perfect for you. So I can give you dozens of examples, right? You could use Dubsado or Trello or your Apple Calendar or Google Calendar. You can use Asana, you can use Moxie, you can use Harvest, you can use Tascade, you can use, what's the other one? There's a ton of these different tools that you can use, but the key is that it has to be something that you will do. I know some people have those big planners that are like 3 inches thick for the whole year. If that's what you need, fine. But the hack is like, you have to have some way to track calls and track deadlines and track when you need to get started. That's it. So don't overcomplicate it, but pick the thing that has worked for you best. Don't try to pick something and then get overwhelmed with it. Pick something where you're like, I know, for me personally, paper doesn't work. I forget about it. I don't have reminders set up. For me, I need digital reminders. Like I need to be able to dump what's in my brain for clients or for calls or notes or whatever onto a digital source so that it'll remind me about it. That's what works for me. But if you like paper, if you're someone who checks it all the time, cool. But it has to be something that you are regularly looking at. Whether you are regularly looking at it, like one of the interesting things that I found out with my breakthrough students. So my breakthrough students are my post-course community. So after the Freelance Writer Wealth Lab, people join Breakthrough, which is our ongoing 24/7 community. And one of my students in there was asking, like, what does everybody do? And the interesting thing was when we were looking at our deadlines and our schedules, everybody, like an overwhelming majority of us, looked at something the night before. And this is like one of my weird little secrets is like every night before I go to sleep, like in my wind down routine, I will look at what's going on the next day. And every Friday, I look at what's coming the next week. So I know all the time what's going on. I think that's another thing is once you have your system set up, you need to like look at it the night before. What's coming up on the next, like today's Friday. So what's coming up next week? And then Sunday night, I'll be like, what's happening Monday? Monday night, I'll be like, what's happening Tuesday? It keeps it fresh in my mind. It reminds me about appointments. I don't have to keep everything in my brain. I don't have to feel scattered or stressed. So look at it the time before. So Friday, look at it for the following week. Sunday, look at it for the following week. And then every day, look at it like what's coming up the next day. That's why I like digital stuff. But the same thing goes for my dry erase calendar. What's coming up next month? If I'm going to get a project, can I actually fit it in? What's going on? And that gives me that big picture overview. So whatever you pick, it has to work for you and you have to be checking in on it regularly. So that's number 4. I think that's something that took me a while to figure out, but now I've got like this system where I know like I need to set X amount of reminders. I need to put it in like my digital calendar, my dry erase calendar, and it helps me make sure that I can handle my clients like a pro, handle my projects like a pro, and I don't have to stress so much. Hold on, I have to cough. Whew. Okay, let's talk about 3. So this is a thing that I didn't realize I did until my Wealth Lab students were asking about it. So my Freelance Writer Wealth Lab students were like, yeah, this was like a couple classes ago. They were like, well, how do you know how much? Yeah, this is the thing too that Holly says. You can even set a reminder to look at it the night before. Yeah. So I have habitualized it, right? So I look at my stuff the night before because I've made that a big habit in my business. But yeah, set a reminder. Hey, don't forget to look at this. I love that, Holly. You can set reminders for reminders, right? So this was something a few times ago where everyone was my students were asking me like, how long does something take, right? So I put in a post of like, here's what these are. This is how long a blog post can take. This is how long a case study can take, an email drip campaign, a white paper, whatever. So I didn't realize I did this until I started putting that together. And it took me writing a post, like I have an article that's going to come out in a little bit, like an interview about how I actually set up my stuff. So number 3 is you need to work backwards based on the type of work it is. So that sounds confusing, but let me break it down. It's super easy. Am I doing a blog post? When is that due? Okay, it's due on X date. How long does it take me to do a blog post when I have other work going on? Well, that's usually 2 weeks, right? We have to kind of fold it into our schedule. We're not just like immediately dropping everything for a new client and then starting this new thing. We have to finish up our other client work, then we can work on this blog post. So when I'm looking at my schedule, I'm working backwards. Okay, if it's due Friday, what's today, the 20th, right? I need to have kind of like started that 2 weeks ago, right? I need to have kind of folded it into my schedule 2 weeks ago. And then when is kind of your emergency date? Your emergency date is like, I know at the bare minimum, I need 3 days. For me, my process is researching, collecting my notes, creating an outline 1 day. Then the next day is writing, and then I sleep on it, and then the third day is editing. So I know if I work backwards, yes, I'm supposed to kind of start noodling on it and weaving it into my schedule 2 weeks ago, right? But let's say I'm super busy. I know my basically emergency time frame is 3 days before it's due. So you need to know that. You need to work backwards. So that means that this works in 2 ways. One, it helps you set your schedule so that you're not overloaded, you're not going to overwhelm, you're not going to burn out. You actually see what's on your calendar, right? And it helps you handle your clients and handle multiple projects without it being stressful because you've already baked in the time. So for example, if I have a blog post and a case study, right? This is the way I always explain it. I think this might actually help if I draw it out. So let me draw it out as, you got, everybody knows I love the whiteboard. So let me get the whiteboard out. And I just want to say, like, forgive the fact that this is probably not like a super accurate calendar. And I think my marker's running out of juice. So if I have a calendar, this is a month, right? So I have my month calendar, right? Oh, my little lines. Okay. I have my month calendar and I'm like, my blog post is due on the 20th and I need to turn in a case study by here. Now, most of the time when I'm doing a case study, it probably takes a month, right? So if I'm doing case study, it probably takes a month because you have to corral everything, right? You have to gather all the information, you have to do the stuff, right? But that also means you need to have a meeting with your client, right? So let's say we have a meeting with our client here because we're like, what do you want the case study to cover? What do you not want it to cover? What are the things you need to highlight? All that stuff. Then we actually have to get the person's email. We have to set up an interview. Let's say that interview doesn't happen until here. So the case study interview happens here. The client call, like the person you're working with to write the case study is here. The person who's being the case study basically is here. Then I need to turn it in here. In amongst that, I have this blog post thing that I know is about this 2-week time span-ish, right? So I know that the emergency time frame is basically these 3 days, right? This is my emergency time. I know this is messy. Just ride with it. So I know this is messy right now, but these 3 days, right? So you know what? Maybe I'll do it in red, and that'll make it easier to see. So we know that if I'm going to do a blog post the 3 days before, right? These 3 days are the thing I need to pay attention to as an emergency time frame. So right now, let's say I only have a blog post and a case study. I'm probably fine. I can get that blog post done earlier. But my case study, I know probably needs like 5 days. So for me in my process, I need a day to figure out, put all my notes together, get the transcription all organized, put it in an outline, put all my stats in the right places. Then I need basically 2 days to write it because it can be chunky for me and I need to kind of absorb information. So for me, I'll write, it'll take 2 to 4 hours and I'll write part of it and then I'll go do other things I need to do. And then the next day I'll write for 2 to 4 hours and then I'll have a fully completed one. And then the next one, so the next day is like editing, cleaning it up. And then I have like the day it's due. So I know that if I have this kind of 5-day barrier, that's the minimum I need to get it done, right? So you need to know what these things are for your business. So it's me, like I've given out time frames. So a blog post is about 2 weeks, case study is probably a month. A white paper can be a month to 3 months, depending on how fast your client is and how you get those interviews scheduled. Your, let's say, email drip campaign can be 2 weeks. What's another thing? Landing pages and sales pages, they can take a couple days or they can take a couple weeks, depending on how long they are. What else? Press releases are probably on the same 3-day process. Gather your research, write it 1 day, edit. Let's see what else. Reported articles are pretty much the same for me. As long as I know for my reported article that I have all my interviews scheduled and they're all done, I know I can get it done in this 3-day process because I've done it so many times. So when you're looking here, you need to work backwards. So every time you're looking at a deadline, you're like, okay, I have multiple clients, multiple projects, multiple calls. You need to figure out how long does that take normally? Like under regular circumstances, 2 weeks. As I fold this into my schedule, I need about 2 weeks to kind of fold it in. Or if I'm under an emergency schedule, do I need 3 days, 5 days? Do I need a weekend? Like, how does that work? So you need to know those things. It's not hard. Just go back and look at your last projects. Or the other thing is, like, if you're someone who isn't sure how long it's going to take, or you're not really sure how you're doing a new type of work, right? You're starting your first case study, buffer in extra time, okay? Don't go crazy being like, yeah, I can get that case study to you in a week. Don't be nuts about it. Like that's not a good thing if you shorten the timeline and then blow up the case study. The goal is to give yourself enough time to kill that work so they're like, oh, well, this is just the normal amount of time it takes to get this quality, right? We want to kind of train our clients that, like, this is the time span to get this quality, right? So that's an important thing to notice. If you're moving into a new type of project, give yourself extra buffer space. We're not in the business of trying to get everything done super quickly. We're not in the business of being like fast turnaround, got to get it done now, blah, 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 all that stuff. I am specifically, I always harp on this with my students about don't put that stuff in your LinkedIn or on your website because it's going to attract red light clients. So when we're working on number 3, you want to make sure you're paying attention to this. Like, how much time does it take me to do this? What is my emergency timeline? What's kind of my folded in timeline, right? And these are things you just write down and then you refer to them. Every time you get a new project, you're like, I know it takes this amount of time. For me, who's been a freelance writer for over a decade, I've ridden that bicycle so much that it's like, I know how much time it takes. Like, I know from doing it over and over again that I didn't write it down. I just know from doing it a bunch. Plus, I wrote it down for my students. So if I need to cheat, I could. But when you're working backwards and considering the type of work, right? I know that I need that 5-day buffer for a case study, but for a reported article or a blog post, I only need 3 days as my kind of emergency timeline. So anytime you are putting in new projects, adding in new clients, you also want to make sure that you're remembering that they have to sign a contract, they have to give you upfront money. There's a lot of moving pieces before you turn in the work, right? So the other reason that we're folding time in is so that we can buffer for onboarding, like sign the contract, give me an upfront payment, right? This isn't the same thing as magazines, but with businesses, right? That first week, I'm probably signing the contract, or I might be negotiating something or answering questions or waiting for the payment to come in, because you're not going to turn in your work if you haven't received your upfront payment, right? Don't do that. So you want to make sure that you're getting all that stuff layered out. So when you're looking at this, right, if my blog post is due here this week, I'm figuring everything out, right? Like, I'm negotiating things, I'm putting my client call together, or I'm getting paid, or I'm signing my contract. And then now I'm like, okay, I got paid, everything's settled. Now I start on the work. Don't start on the work until you get everything settled, because things fall through, things get messed up, you don't get paid. And there are times, and this is something that happens, where writers will be like, oh, it's going to be fine. They turn in their work and then they get ghosted, right? Someone takes their work and they publish it, right? So we want to make sure to avoid that. So number 3, work backwards based on the type of work. And that's both folding in time into your already ongoing schedule and knowing, like, hey, when an emergency happens, I need a minimum of X amount of days. Karina says, is a 3-week deadline way too much for clients, proper deadlines and interviews? I don't want to skip on quality, but I don't want to lose work. Yeah, so it depends. Like, I when I'm doing some work, like, I will leave a 4-week buffer zone for blog posts depending on how busy my schedule is. So it's not so much that it's too much for your clients. It's more like, what is your schedule doing? So, like, sometimes I have 2 weeks just because I'm like, I can fit it in. Like, it's not that big of a deal. And sometimes it's a month. So it's more about, like, how many other deadlines and projects do you have? How many other things can you handle without going into burnout, without going into overwhelm, without hating freelance writing forever and wanting to quit, right? So it's, for me, like, I will quote 4 weeks sometimes to a client. I'll just say, like, my schedule is booked, right? Like, so we are most of the time spending that time ironing out the contract, getting things signed, if we need to negotiate anything, getting upfront payment. So you're not going to really get started anyways. So it's not that it's, like, too much. The other thing too to remember is, like, red light clients, like, I've been starting to call them red lighters. So maybe we'll call them that. Red lighters, red light clients, red lighters. They want something now. They want it now. They want it done. I need it yesterday, because they're not good at planning and they're not very good at setting their schedules the right way. So you will get stuff where you get a lot of pushback on deadline. That's usually not what good green lighters do. Green light clients are like, can you fit this in your schedule? What does your schedule look like? Or my favorite question is, when is your next deadline open, right? Like, what does your schedule look like? And when is your next deadline open? That is respecting your schedule, respecting the fact that you have other clients, right? And it's also, like, giving you space to say, oh man, I'm really booked, but I can get it to you by X date. Does that work for you? And they can tell you yes or no. Usually they're like, yes, that's fine. But most of the time, if they want to negotiate, it's by a week. So, like, instead of you say 4 weeks, they're like, can you do 3? And you're like, yeah, I guess I can. So it's not too much. It's that the right clients understand you have multiple projects, multiple clients, multiple deadlines. They understand you have an ongoing business, right? that's how I always kind of think about it. And I teach my students, like, we have this ongoing set of deadlines. This is something that should be a regular piece of your business, right? So you have something that basically looks like this. Like, you have an ongoing loop of deadlines, right? We have deadline and deadline and deadline and deadline. So you're trying to fit in new client work here, basically, right? So like, as we're fitting in new client work, we still have to hit all these other deadlines. So this is the looping effect of like adding something in later on. So you're like, I have 4 weeks, I'm booked, I can't do it, but I could do it here. And this is the part about having green lighters. Green lighters know that you already have this. By the time they are here, right? This is your first encounter, right? Oops. This is like your first encounter, your first call, your first meeting. They know this is already going on. Like, they don't expect you to be not working or to drop everything else to just slot them in. Like, that's not the case. If you had a client who was asking for rush work, different situation. They're asking for rush work. They're asking to be slotted into your schedule, different situation. But typically a green light client will just be like, I know you have these other deadlines. I know you have other clients. So where in here can we fit? Like, where is your first availability, right? Okie dokie. Let's talk about, oh no, I wasn't discussing X's and O's of football, Albert. I could if you wanted to, but football is like my thing. But no, not this time. Okay, so that was 3. Let's talk about 2. So 2 here, number 2 is our tools. Love the tools, right? I'm like a tools, I'm nuts over the tools. The only person I've met who's like better at evaluating tools is my student Jessica Burgoyne. She is the best tools person ever. I always bother her about, I'm like, I'm trying this thing and do I do this and how is this tool working? So shout out to Jessica. But tools, you need to figure out what tools work best for you. So for example, when we're working, when we're submitting work, when we're following up, what is like your minimum set of tools? My minimum set is basically, if I had to cut out all my tools, I need Dubsado and Boomerang. I could survive with Dubsado and Boomerang. If I want to get spicy, I need LinkedIn Premium and I need Hunter.io. That's it. But we need to figure out what are kind of our minimum viable tools that are running our business. So it doesn't matter if Dubsado is too complicated for you. It's not the perfect tool for everybody. Maybe you like Asana, maybe you like Moxie, maybe you like PandaDoc. What was the other one? There was another one that always comes up that I always forget. You need some kind of set of tools. So these tools are actually helping you do the main processes of your business. This is why this hack is crazy easy, because like, don't overthink it. Think about the way you naturally work, and you will go through iterations of tools. So for example, I had FreshBooks, and then FreshBooks did an update that was like way too complicated for me, and I was just like, no. So I switched to Harvest. And then after a while with Harvest, I was like, I need more capabilities. And then I was like, oh, Dubsado, uh-oh, we might have our snug friend. Dubsado, hi snug friend, come on in. Can you get over that light? Then I was like, Dubsado, come here, babe. Come on, be brave. Good girl. Our Snork is here. Dubsado had the features that I wanted. So I got to get rid of Calendly and Trello and Harvest and like a ton of other tools, because Dubsado did it all in one. So Dubsado runs my client projects. It has my proposals, my contracts, my invoices. It's how I get paid because it integrates with Stripe. It's how I schedule calendar appointments. It's how I deal with financial stuff. It's how I track stuff for taxes. Oh, QuickBooks. The other one people like is QuickBooks. You raking around over there? So, you doing a little sniff test? Oh, it's just a blankie. I need to get your camera. So you need to figure out what tools make sense for you, and it's okay to go with iterations. It's okay to try some tools, see what works for you. But the hack is like, you figure out a tool and you use that thing to its utmost capability, right? We're like, this is the tool for us. It does a ton of different things. We're going to roll with it, right? So when you're looking at these things, I'm using Dubsado, and then Boomerang is how I follow up. So one of the essential functions that I need to do in my business is follow up, right? Every freelance writer needs to follow up. I use Boomerang for that. You could use Vocus.io. You could probably use the built-in features of Gmail for that. But I love Boomerang. And The cool thing about Boomerang is I can submit work whenever I want. Okay. So I had a student, and I feel like this is a good one. Marie, this is something I tell my students, but Marie did it. So I'm not the only one. So Marie went out and she needed to move. So Marie grew her business enough with the Wealth Lab. So with Freelance Writer Wealth Lab, Marie grew her business enough to move to a brand new fancy apartment. And while she was moving, she used Boomerang to submit her work. So what that means is like she would write an email, attach the work, and tell Boomerang, hey, send this email on X date. And she did that for all of her work. So her work was submitted every single week via Boomerang. Boomerang would just auto send those emails on the date and time that she specified. And she moved without her client knowing, right? She had all of these things boomeranged out so that they would send on, I'm just saying every Friday. So like every Friday, her assignments were sent because she bulk did her work before she moved, right? So now, so now she can move, or she could go on vacation, or she could go do other stuff, right? Without her client ever knowing anything, which don't lie to your clients, but it is cool to be able to move and like have your work submitted. She was still checking emails, she was still doing stuff, but her time wasn't absorbed so much in work. It was being submitted on the deadlines that she talked to with her client about, and boom, it's done. So you need to figure out what are kind of your essential functions, right? Our essential functions are usually contract or proposal, contract, invoice. We need to be able to get paid. We need to be able to manage our client projects somewhere. We need to have some kind of scheduling tool. And then we also need some kind of way to boomerang messages or snooze them or bring them back into our inbox. Because if you need to follow up on an LOI or a pitch, Boomerang will put it right back in your inbox. Vocus.io, so Vocus.io is another tool. Google or Gmail will do that too, but Boomerang is more advanced. It like lets you click a bunch of options. So anytime you're following up, anytime you're bringing things back to your inbox, we need a tool for that. But the deal is like your job is don't overcomplicate it. Make it really simple. Try one tool. Okay, let's try Harvest and Boomerang. Okay, I like Boomerang, but not Harvest. All right, let me try Moxie and Boomerang. Oh, I love Moxie and Boomerang. Let's go for it, right? So we need to figure out which tools are best. This also goes with systems, right? So those systems would be, how do you follow up? Or how are you turning in work? Or how are you getting paid? How are you following up on invoices that aren't getting paid? How are you scheduling all your appointments? Or if someone cancels an appointment, how do they reschedule, right? Those systems and processes. So for me, when I'm figuring out these tools, like it's really about learning more of how you naturally work. We are not trying to fight the beast, right? We're really trying to, we're not trying to make ourselves do stuff just because it's like the best thing. This was something that I think I really got stuck in as a freelance writer. When I was coming up, I was like, just tell me the best process. Just tell me the best process and I will do that and it will work. And that's just not how it is, because everybody works a little bit differently, right? Everybody kind of needs different reminders or they use paper versus digital, or they have a dry erase calendar, or they need different tools that do different things, or they like to gamify stuff. So your job isn't to fight the beast and be like, it's the perfect thing. Your job is to be like, what does the beast want? The inner beast needs a calendar tool that does ABC. Okay, the inner beast needs something to do proposal, contract, invoice. The inner beast needs to be able to have this many reminders or this thing. So your job is to start keeping track of these things, right? If you haven't been keeping track, you need to start keeping track of these things. Write them down. I like to do this. I know when I do a project, I need these things. Keep track of these. You can put them in Notion. That's where I've been keeping a lot of my notes. So put them in Notion or put them in the Notes app or Evernote or however you do it. Keep track of that. Then we're going to align what you do, what the beast wants, with these tools. That's it. And then we're going to use the tools. So I don't want it to be this big process of like the perfect thing, because for me, when I'm running my business, Dubsado works and Asana doesn't work for me. Asana like makes me nuts. Like I don't like it. So there are people who like Dubsado and people who like Asana, or people who like PandaDoc and people who like Moxie or whatever, or Harvest or FreshBooks. So you got to pick the thing that makes the most sense for how you work, how you train that little beast in you to do the work, right? So once we have these tools, once we know exactly like what we're looking for, boom, we find the tool, we put it in the system. So that helps us handle multiple projects, multiple clients, multiple deadlines, because we have everything organized in our tools in a way that naturally works for how we like to work. We're not fighting the system. Yeah. Holly says, yay, Notion. Yeah. I don't want you to be fighting your inner system, right? Like I'll talk to writers who are like, I like paper. And I'm like, fine, use paper. You just have to make sure that you're checking the paper, right? If you don't need digital alerts, fine. But you have to have a system that continually helps you handle multiple things at one time without getting overwhelmed, without burning out, without feeling a ton of self-doubt or imposter syndrome or getting stuck in the nitty-gritty. Okay. So when we're looking at these tools, they should make you feel like your life is being simplified. Okay. Excuse me. Anytime you're looking at a tool, it should be that your life is getting simplified. That's why it's super easy. Like, pick the thing that makes the most sense to your brain. You're like, oh, of course, this is naturally how I do my projects. This is naturally how I organize things, right? Pick that tool and it will be this amazing lift on your life. You won't have to do as many complicated things. You won't have to track as many things. It will just be like, as long as you put it in the tool, you're good to go, okay? Karina says, thank you so much, Mandy. You always know the perfect thing to say to erase any of my fears about approaching clients. You're the best. Well, I think it's just like I've made a lot of stupid mistakes. So I think a lot of times it seems like erasing fears, but it's like I've done a lot of stupid stuff. Like I always make the joke that like I've eaten all the fruit from the dum-dum tree. Like I've made a lot of dumb mistakes. So like I know from me making dumb mistakes that like it's not that big of a deal. It's nothing bad's gonna happen. No one's gonna like report you to like freelancers, like blacklist, blah blah blah, right, Charlie? Charlie's like, please, snacks. Charlotte, you look like a little walrus. You look like you're a beached seal. Charlotte says, make sure to use the tool that makes sense for you. She says, make sure that any kind of tool you use, you're picking the tool that is your natural way of working. So as long as we go with the natural flow, the tools are all good. Don't get, if you don't need a super complicated tool, don't get one. Pick the thing that makes the most sense for you and pick the thing that's going to help you submit work and help you follow up on invoices and help, get all the stuff done. Ah, flower power. This used to be like my biggest thing. So flower power says the fear of being reported is so real. So here's the deal. Oh, Charlotte, I love your ear. This is not a thing. Like the only thing that happens is there is like, I will tell you that there is like a kind of like a editor. It's not a blacklist from the editors. Like there's no like circulating list, but there are editors who are like, hey, I've already told you 900 times not to do this. Or it's someone who is, bless you, who is not pitching them correctly, or someone who's harassing them basically. They'll stop working with them, but there's no like universal blacklist out there where you like can't get clients. Like there's always some people where they're clearly doing something wrong. Like if you clearly do something wrong, someone's going to stop working with you, right? Here you go, Bean. So that's the thing is like, I realized like there's no underground meeting, right? There's no underground meeting where every editor is like, hey, we're not going to work with so-and-so anymore because that was like too, it was too wrong or too this. It's not a thing. It doesn't exist. Individual editors will be like, yeah, I'm not working with so-and-so anymore because of ABC reason. But that's usually after you have done something multiple times and they've told you not to, or like they've said, like, please do this thing instead, and you don't do it, right? There's no like international blacklist. It doesn't exist. Okay, let's get to number one. Before we get to number one, Charlotte, would you like to say anything before we get to number one? She's like, more snacks. Charlotte, can you give everybody a high five? Because they're doing great today. Oh, good girl. Good job. All right, let's get to number one. This is our most important thing. And this is the thing that like I have already alluded to, but I think is really important. So number one, and if you have found this helpful so far, give it a thumbs up. If you want to learn more about being fully booked as a freelance writer, subscribe. Okie dokie. Number one thing, and this is a thing that I'm like obsessed with, automate as much as possible. Okay, this is what I've kind of already alluded to. When Marie was turning in her work, that was automated, right? She finished her work, and the actual sending of her work in while she moved every single week was automated. So when we're looking at making our business a lot easier to handle, especially when we have multiple freelance writing clients or freelance writing projects or copywriting projects or content strategy projects, whatever you're working on, automate as much as possible. So this was driven by my insane annoyance with multiple emails. I do not need to send you an email for a proposal, and then when someone replies back, say, send the contract, send another email, and then they have questions, and then send another email, and then they want the invoice, and then send another. No. What we're doing is we're using a tool to automate as much as possible. We are removing as many emails or as many repetitive, unnecessary tasks as possible. So not only can we turn in our work ahead of time, and I've done this too. When I'm super busy and I have an article where I'm like, hey, it's not due for X amount of time, I'll either turn it in early or I'll put it in Boomerang, and I'll have Boomerang send it on the day it's due in the morning or something like that. So I have done that, and it helps you manage your stuff. If you're like, hey, I can finish this work early, or in order to start this other project, I need to finish this early and still slot it in at this later date, because that way I won't have to do edits and it won't be a big mess at the same time. So we want to make sure we're automating as much as possible, either sending in your work, cutting down emails. This is why I love Dubsado, because I can send a proposal, contract, invoice, right? I don't have to send any more emails. If they have questions, they can totally email me about that, but it's not multiple emails, multiple follow-ups, and multiple this thing. If someone does not respond to a proposal, contract, invoice, right, they're all together in Dubsado. They can click between them. They're all the same link. So if someone doesn't respond, yes, I do follow up on those, but it's usually like the problem, like I explained, where someone's like, we like your proposal, send the contract. Now we have questions on this, send this other thing. And it's like 900 emails for no reason. So when we're looking to do this, this is how, and this is the secret, like this is the thing. This is how you see writers do more, do more stuff. They manage more things. They handle more tasks by actually doing less, right? They have their tools automate things. There's a bunch of automations in Dubsado where I can just set a workflow. A workflow just means automation. So what I can say is like, hey, when someone fills out this form, send them the link to schedule a call. When someone does this, send them this, or make a project, or put them in my client space, or do, like I can tell Dubsado to do all this stuff. Basically, the format is like, if A, B happens, and if B happens, C happens, and right? And I can go on and on and on. So if we automate things, we can cut down on emails, we can make our inbox less of a stress zone, right? We don't have to do as much like this thing and then following up on every little nitty-gritty part of a project. We can turn in work whenever we like. We can also make sure that our systems and processes help us scale. So this is another thing that I often talk about with my Wealth Lab students, my Freelance Writer Wealth Lab students, and my Runway students. So with my Runway students and my Wealth Lab students, there's this this idea. So this, you might have seen this on the live stream before. It's basically like this, okay? So when you get started, all of your time and all of your work is at the height. It takes forever, right? It's all of your, this is effort. Hold on. And this is like your work. Okay. So your effort takes a lot, right? When you get started, it takes a lot of effort. You're learning the ropes. You're figuring it out. But then what ends up happening is you're like, oh, I get it now. It takes me less time, less brain space. It's not so much of a heavy lift. But then you have all this space to scale, right? This is due to not only getting faster at your work or even understanding your work better or getting a process in place, but also automating things. So you have all this space here now, right? Here to here to scale your business. We don't have to spend so much time doing everything up here anymore like a crazy person, right? We want to make sure that we're getting to this place where, yes, we have more work, but we have more space to scale. We don't have to spend as much time, right? So that's the thing I think is really important, is this diagram. Tools, systems, and processes get you to this diagram. Getting rid of unnecessary functions by automating them as much as you can, that's this. So if I'm automating stuff, I don't have to keep it in my brain. I don't have to go in and manually do all these processes. I don't have to manually follow up on failed invoice or missed invoice payments. I don't have to do a lot of stuff, right? Because it's already taken care of by a tool, a system, or a process. So if I automate stuff, now I have either more space to take on work or more vacation time or more rest time or more time with my kids. I don't have kids, but like if I had kids, or this one, more time with this little goob. She went to sleep on us. But you know what I mean? Like, we're creating that space with automating things. And this is a process that I think a lot of freelance writers miss. They're like, how does this person do so much? It seems like they're only working 30 hours a week or whatever, and they're doing more than me. It's this. It's that they figured out how to automate things. It's not that they're magic. It's not that they're better than you. It's not that they're like, there's some kind of magical unicorn spirit inside of them, right? It's basically because they're automating things. They're telling Asana or Dubsado or whatever other tool they have to do stuff on their behalf, right? And this is also why I don't have a spreadsheet anymore for following up. I used to have this massive, annoying LOI follow-up spreadsheet that drove me nuts. So I have an initial LOI spreadsheet, right? Our letters of introduction to reach out to businesses. That thing helps me because it's scannable and easy to send my LOIs and all that follow-up, like if I need to follow up. But Boomerang now just puts it back. So if I get a reply to an LOI, if I have someone who I had a call with them, or I had a proposal contract invoice and none of those resulted in a project, I boomerang it out. It comes back into my inbox and I follow up. I don't need to have this big spreadsheet that's a pain in the butt where I'm like, whose email do I need to find? Boomerang just puts it back in my inbox. That saves me so much time. And I feel like there's so many things that we can automate in our business that become headaches, like failed invoice payments, or people who miss their invoice payments, or like I said, deadline reminders, or when we're needing to get something signed, or we need to remind ourselves to turn something in, right? Like whether you need to turn in an ACH form or a W-9, right? Your W-9 basically just is a tax form that helps you get 1099s at tax time. So there's so many things that we can automate in our business. And I feel like it just becomes this very easy breezy way to do it. There are repetitive tasks in your business. Here's how to get started. Write down all the repetitive tasks you're doing in your business. How can you automate those? And then you will get so much time, effort, energy, brain space back. It's insane. So I used to do everything manually, and it took so much time. And now I run my 6-figure freelance writing business. I run Freelance Writer Wealth Lab. It opens twice a year. I run Runway, right? So Runway's open right now. So if you want to check out Runway, I'll tell you a little bit more about it. But if you want to check out Runway, it's a 5-day fast track class, mandyellis.com/runway. We'll revisit that in a second. But I'm running Runway. And then I have my ongoing breakthrough community, which is my 24/7 community for my Wealth Lab students. And then I'm also running my one-on-one coaching business. And I just like to have my finger in a lot of pies, but I'm able to do all that stuff because I automate things. I don't make it harder on myself, right? So like if I can reply to someone quickly, sometimes I will boomerang it out, right? So like if I have a client where it's like, I don't really need to answer this immediately, or I need to train a client that I'm not like instantly available every time they send an email, I'll boomerang it out a day or two, right? Depends on when I got it. But there's stuff too where it's like we don't have to immediately jump every time a client says jump, right? So these things help you get space instead of being like, oh my God, I got an email, I gotta like immediately respond. No, boomerang it. Even if you want to immediately respond. Let's say you got an email and 2 minutes later you're like, I want to respond. Fine, respond, but boomerang that message for the next day so that your client doesn't start expecting you to respond immediately. When your client starts expecting you to respond immediately, those times when you're super busy and you're not responding for 24 hours or 48 hours, they're going to panic because you've trained them that you're there all the time. This is one of those secrets of those writers that you see that handle multiple clients, multiple projects all the time while doing less. It's because they're already training their clients not to expect them to get back to them super fast. And there's all these other automations, right? So when we're kind of going through that, I think that we really want to focus on like, how do I scale my business? How do I give myself space to scale, right? That's kind of like how all this stuff works. When we're handling multiple freelance clients and projects, It's about being able to add those on without getting more mental load, becoming overwhelmed, getting burned out, hating freelance writing, all that stuff. Right, Bean? Yeah? You want to give everybody a high five? Good job. Good girl. So, automation. Write down things that you're doing that are repetitive, right? That's the thing that I did. What are the things that I repetitively do all the time that are taking mental space or energy, that are annoying and frustrating, like following up or dealing with things that are missed or whatever, or reminders of some kind? Make an automation for that. I don't care how you, like, what tool works for you, right? Pick the tool that makes the most sense, but automate a ton of stuff in your business. And now you have time back to do more work without having to rush around. You have time to do whatever else, right? Like, you don't have to work a ton of hours because you have other things that are automated, right? I think that kind of like that system and process and the tools that you're using, they make this like nice little harmony so that you actually get time back. So what do you think, Charlie? Charlie's like, I always have time. I'm outside all the time harassing squirrels and skunks and deer. So I think these for me are the most important. Like when I'm thinking about super easy ways to handle multiple different things in my business, these are the ways to do it. I want to make sure that we're thinking about like the natural flow. Your natural flow is going to be different than mine. Use the tools and systems and processes that work best for you. That little beast in you that's like, I need a digital tool, or like, I need paper, whatever. Listen to the little gremlin inside of you and write those things down. Automate as much as you can. Okay. Those things are really important. Kind of like, they're not hard to do. Once you set it up once, now we're done pretty much. Boomerang, it's like once you click the button to boomerang, now we're done, right? So we want to make sure that it's like something you can set up and use again, or it's like a really easy thing to use like boomerang. Yeah? What do you think, Bean? She's like, more snacks. More snacks. Okay. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope this helps you see like how we're actually handling a lot of stuff at once, and it's not actually trying to like lawnmower us to death, right? So we're actually being able to handle, and the deal is like you should only have usually 3 to 5 clients as a freelance writer, or even someone who works in publications, right? Whether you're working with businesses or whether you're working with magazines, sometimes you can have like 10 to 20 magazine clients at one time based on like when you're doing stories for them, but usually you have 3 to 5. So we don't need a ton of stuff in our business. We don't need to overwhelm ourselves, but we do need to be able to handle it well without us feeling like a crazy person running around all times, pushing all the buttons all days of the week, right? So we want to make sure that we're going through and we're doing things that make sense for us. We want to make sure that we are working backwards based on the type of work. So we're paying attention to how long it takes us to do it, plus like our emergency time frame. We're using different tools that make sense for us, and we're automating as much as possible. Okay. So I hope that this has been helpful. I want to make sure I tell you guys a little bit more about Runway. So if you want to learn how to do that stuff, if you want to learn how to automate, what to automate more, what types of tools that I didn't mention here, because there's lots of tools that can work for you, how to actually put the systems and processes in place to scale your business, that is what Runway is for. So Runway is a 5-day fast track class. It's open right now. You can check it out at mandyellis.com/runway, but it actually helps you handle multiple projects and multiple clients without wanting to pull your hair out. So it teaches you how to ramp up your business, but it also teaches you how to ramp up without it being this insane thing where you're like, now I've ramped up my business and like I have no time for a life. It's not like that. It's teaching you how to ramp up your business to get better clients, to make more money in less time, and really kind of get over, like if you're one of those freelance writers who's been a little bit stuck at 30 to 50K, this can help you get over that and kind of get to that better tier of client. It also helps you create that space. It teaches you how to scale your business. It teaches you how to actually create space so you can go after better clients, so that you can have time back, so you can automate things, so you can put tools in place, right? So check out Runway, mandyellis.com/runway. It's open now. And then as usual, I always kind of like end with pricing guide. If you haven't gotten my free pricing guide for freelance writers, go to mandyellis.com/pricing guide. We talked about what projects, like how long they take. If you want to know how to price them, mandyellis.com/pricing guide, totally free. Charlie, would you like to add anything else? She's like, no more snips. Charlie, can you do a round for everybody today? Let's see if you'll do it. Yeah, well, you did this. Good job. Can you go around? Oh, you don't want to? Okay. Charlie's been feeling a little rusty and dusty recently. She's been getting a lot of walks, but she's getting older, so she's been a little rusty and dusty. All right. I hope this has been helpful for everybody. I hope that this is relieving the stress of being able to handle these things. We don't want to make it complicated. We actually just want to go with our natural flow, okay? Don't try to add all the tools. Add the things that make the most sense for you to deal with the stuff that's coming up in your business, right? The things that you can automate, the things that are causing you the most headache, the things that are sucking the most time out of your schedule, right? We want to make sure we're managing those things with a tool, a process, a system, or some kind of way to automate it. All right, so I hope everybody has a good Friday. I hope everybody, we're here every Friday at noon Central Time. We always do fun topics. So, what else was I going to say? I hope everybody has a good weekend. I hope everybody has a good Friday, and I will see you next Friday. Bye.